All right, guys, we're finally getting another episode recorded. We're going much more local this time. Uh, Honestly, might be the first time, I think it's the first conversation we're having with someone actually based in Kansas. So today we have someone pretty unique joining us. We have Jorge Garibay. Uh, he is a beekeeper, bee manager. He does some things in his backyard that are super unique, super interesting. I met him through a mutual acquaintance, Josh Lloyd, about that would have been spring of 23, I believe. Josh put me in
Yep.
contact with him, and Jorge kind of, to put it politely, he crapped in my pudding when I met him. Uh, I had plans for that year, and he kind of just blew my mind, blew my plans out the water. Um, but he's really sparked a different perspective for me personally. Um, and so yeah, he's a really interesting character. There's some there he's doing. I'll let him share kind of his story, and then when we get to the end, he can kind of share where you can get a hold of him. But yeah, Jorge, why don't you go ahead, kind of introduce yourself, and we'll get this conversation started.
Well, welcome everyone. Happy New Year, January in 2025. Boy, if you would have asked me, Tyrell, what where I saw myself by this time before I moved to the Midwest, I wouldn't be where I am now. Um, you have to be so, oh, what's the word? You have to be so flexible in agriculture. You have to be so flexible. There's so much information. There's so much education. Especially it seems like in the Midwest here, there are just so many forces, so many organizations that are educating on so many different subjects. There's a plethora of information, maybe too much information. Maybe we're to the point where we starting to have conflicting information as far as education on how to do things. And, you know, there's a turnover in agriculture where the old ways are meeting new ways. So it has been challenging for us as bee managers um, because we're kind of a new, um, there's lots of bee managers, beekeepers that pollinate throughout the whole U.S., but I think the Midwest here has been skipped kind of a lot because during the time when we need bees here in the Midwest, North and South Dakota hold the majority of the commercial hives. So um, infiltrating into this has been challenging and fun, but I think we're to the point where we need to we need to just get down to business. Like education is great, but experience is the only thing that can validate that information. I really thought we would be at a much different point here in 2025. We moved here in 2019 to start our beekeeping operations. We first moved to Nebraska. We found that we couldn't find the bee stock um, in the properties that we were working on in Nebraska. So we moved south um, and found that this is the place where we're probably the last stand of, I call them Native American bees, but they're the European honeybees that have been here for 400 years. Um, there's still access to bees that are kind of managing themselves, kind of helping the farms, uh, whether or not the farmers know that these bees are on their properties, helping them with their crops, um, maintaining their tree row blooms, things like that. So we're excited to be here. I know we haven't caught bees at your place yet, and I'm kind of very strict on that. That if we can't, if we can't manage to house um, bee colonies that are already on your property, we really have to think that maybe we're going to struggle keeping them there, if that makes sense. So, um, yeah, it's something that we can talk about a little bit later, but But yeah, we've had places that are very successful. We have places that, you know, we struggle with once we get the bees kind of established until we figure out the right plantings, the right crop rotations to integrate a beekeeping um, aspect. But I will tell you that there has not been one farm, one homestead, um, one group of people where we work with our bees and our program that has said this sucks. There's not been one company that has said this is not adding value to our farm. Every single every single farm um, will tell you that we're producing a product that consumers want, um, a product that can hold its value. We've taken the commodity out of honey, and I'm not saying we're making artisanal honey, but we're making honey that comes from a farm. We're taking a product that truly um, that you could taste the farm in the product, and that it ends up in a consumer's table. So one of the things that really um, I've never stopped to take pictures of it, but almost on every major highway in Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, maybe even Texas, but you'll see signs that say one Kansas farmer will feed 155 families.
Yep.
But
Yep.
how? Do we really? And by the way, the Nebraska one's like 168. So we got to step it up here. Um, so yeah, my main focus, the company's focus, NAPA Bees. NAPA stands for North American Pollinator Alliance. In our beginnings, um, this also encompassed native pollinators. So everything that we do here does help the native pollinators. Um, but at this point, our main focus is to establish um, more than regenerative, basically input-free beehives to where they're helping us with our crops. In years where our plantings are correct, we're creating a honey product that is unparalleled, that sells out almost as soon as our farms post it. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what we are, what we do. We help farmers where we think bees can naturally be successful, get a beehive program established. Um, we are tracking how bees are helping with different crops. So we know there's many studies from all over the world. We know that bees can help with many different crops and pollination. So we have specifically focused on doing our own studies on what a yield increase would be. Well, we've done pumpkin pollinations where we know that the yield increases. Um, the soybean pollination, we've done 2 trials of that. Um, we're still working on that, but there is a positive correlation between having honeybees and higher yield, even though it's just a little bit at this time. The cotton, we've done cotton now 2 years in a row, and we've been able to increase the cotton production substantially. Um, some of those numbers are private because the studies are funded by the farmer and us, but we're working on establishing to make sure that we are affecting not only increases in bushels, but also the biggest component why farmers need honeybees is it will push them to increase their rotation of forbs. So, wheat, corn, milo, um, all grasses, um, soybeans, alfalfa, hairy vetch, all legumes. We are lacking the forb component that Dr. Christine Jones talks so much about, the true diverse um, monoculture of forbs, and that's what our company is trying to help with. In the coming years, there's going to be a huge boom in the eco-friendly biofuels, and we are right at the center of it. The canolas, the camelinas, there's a new mustard called Egyptian mustard, um, called carinata that's on the horizon. But also we're looking at, possibly doing plantings of chicory, of buckwheat, of sunflowers, increasing those forb um, crops as monocultures into a rotation can really help us elongate or have longer rotations between grasses, which we know can take a toll on our soils planted year after year after year without rest. Um, and also legumes. We know that planting monocultures of legumes year after year after year, season after season can cause really compacted soil. So cover cropping has done, I think, a lot, but I think it's missing a huge forb component. Most cover crops don't allow for many forbs. So bees are kind of a way to entice farmers to grow more forbs, which in turn will help with their soil health.
So,
Lots
before
to
you,
work with there.
yes, yes. So, where were you? What were you doing before you decided to start this adventure? What was the impetus, and what were you doing before you started Napa?
Well, we were beekeepers in California, kind of on a hobby level. Um, Had full-time jobs as risk managers in the agriculture field, um, specifically in winemaking, in vineyard work. So we're very familiar with while we had bees in this agricultural field, um, we were seeing the amount of fungicides, insecticides, um, pesticides in general, herbicides being applied to large monocultures of vineyards all over, really the whole West Coast was kind of where we were focusing, mainly in California. And I noticed it was affecting um, my passion, my hobby, my what I really love doing, which is honeybees. Um, but so our history is in agriculture, is in risk prevention, um, as far as mitigating um, human health hazards, if that makes sense. So our company motto is NAPA Bees save the humans. That comes from that. We have a we have a history of being a career fireman as well in California. So the whole save the bees is important, but our company is really focused on saving the humans. There's nobody looking inward to save ourselves. The things we put ourselves through to put food on the table is incredible. What we ask our employees to do, to don, chemical suits to go spray a crop that we're not going to actually even enjoy. Um, that's that's a tough decision for every farmer. I know it's something that's not taken lightly. Even the recommendations by uh, land managers or what do you call them? Um,
Agronomist.
yeah, you know, I know it doesn't come easy to them, you know, and in fact, we we cause problems sometimes with the agronomists because we throw a monkey wrench into their proven repertoire you know of prescriptions. You know, now we're having to have agronomists figure out, well, shoot, we really need to spray this, but the farmer has a substantial number a substantial investment in honeybees, so we can't be spraying this, for instance. So maybe they have to look for an alternative that's maybe more um, bio-friendly, something that's, tested to be easier on bees, or um, it has caused some challenges and some communications, which I think are a positive thing.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, there's many things that we can do to work, but now we have a significant investment in something that doesn't require or would be negatively affected by bees. Something living, if that makes sense. Something living that we put value on versus a weed, which we can't value that because we believe it's affecting, our crop. So my company has, I think, challenged um, every single farm that we are on at some point or another. The homesteads we're on, which is about a third of our clientele, they're not really affected by that.
Right.
They want better gardens. They want honey. They want to be able to sell honey that's, untainted to their customers as part of their offerings, along with chicken eggs, along with, processed lamb or processed beef. They want to add, one more component to their bundles of, of actual food that's going to feed their neighbors. So they don't have and it's not a problem. It's a great thing. Being able to communicate, about this, but yeah,
Well,
I think we've had one company, one farm that has just said, you know what, we can't do this.
and I think the way that your approach to managing bees is a manner that it's not it's not input intensive. It's not necessarily extremely. You're trying to make it as take as little labor as possible by doing things that allow the bees to thrive on their own. And so that fits for most homesteaders because the last thing they want is a high input, I got to go buy this, I got to go buy that, I got to go buy food stock for it. It's like I'm already because on a homestead, you already might be having to bring in outside feed. I mean, that's just the way most homesteads are. You have to bring
Yep.
in outside feed. Well, why, if I have an insect, if I have something like a bee, well, I don't want to have to go buy sugar for them. I don't want to have to go buy antibiotics for them. I don't want to have to go uh, get chemical treatments for them. I want them to just benefit me. I get the honey. If I had to provide stuff for them as far as flowers, that's fine because it's going to benefit everything else. And so I think that's like for me, when I first met you, I knew basically nothing about bees. And just what little research I was doing before meeting you was like, oh my gosh, I got to buy this, I got to buy that, I got to buy that. It's like, well, how damn much honey am I going to have to sell before this is profitable at the end or not costing me money? Um, and so I think that, to me, anyways, that's what makes your approach so attractive is that it's not completely hands off, but it's a different type of management than conventional beekeeping, I guess.
Yeah. Um, to someone who's not a farmer, to someone who's not kind of in tune with insects, um, basically, I'm doing the same thing. Our company's doing the same thing that somebody could do with like earthworms. We just haven't figured out how to sell, a ton of earthworms,
Right.
another insect species, right?
Yep.
Um, they're doing all the work. If we choose the right stock, if we have the right environment, if we can create the right environment, or at least not ruin the environment where we found them in,
Right.
That's kind of the first basis. It's like, and that's the premise of like the way we choose our farms is we go, we look further, we look deeper. If we can't find honeybees, then you know what? This might be a location for down the road. You know, we want to find the places that already have honeybees, that are lacking places to go to.
Right.
And that's all we're doing. We're providing housing for them. We're providing, making sure that there's water available, which is the number one principle, and food sources. There's going to be years where our rotations aren't favorable for blooms. When we go wheat, corn, you know, cover crop of, oat and vetch,
Right.
that's a bee desert.
Right. Right.
But that might be one of the years. That might be in one of our years, right? So maybe that year, that farmer, we realize in July, we're not going to make it. These bees are going to have to go to another farm whose rotation is favorable, where we
Right.
have, canola, soybeans, and sunflowers, right? That would be an amazing rotation, followed up by wheat. It'd be an incredible wheat crop. But, it that's why our company is growing so fast because we're allowing this community. We're working this as a community. We're funds are going to dictate what farmers plant. I mean, to be honest, um, prices as well, but forecasted weather predictions or the weather that we have had will dictate what a farmer is going to plant. So we know ahead of time if we're going to have food for bees or not. So our company allows that flexibility that everyone is cooperating to where if one farmer, we just know, hey, all his stuff got hailed out. His sunflower crop that we were expecting got hailed out. Make a phone call to another producer. Would you be okay with us bringing bees over here? The bees would be helping the other farmer pollinate, and at least the bees will have enough food for that winter, and then we're going to try again to make honey the next year. So we're providing kind of a community um,
Hmm.
for this, and this goes with the homesteaders as well. You know, homesteaders have a lot less maybe blooms, and they're more reliant on the farmers working around them. But we have this year in several places been able to place, our homesteading hives on commercial places uh, to help us get through so that we don't have to have inputs.
Right.
And it benefits the farmer to have our style bees. So
Yep.
it's uh it's been great. It's been challenging, just like anything. It's a roller coaster. We'll be doing great, and then we'll lose everything. But then the next spring, they all come back. It's almost always the case that the first year we do great, and then we find the actual carrying capacity of that land, and the population will regulate itself to that,
Right.
which is why it's so great to have an insect that has a gestation period of 21 days versus having cattle, a
Yeah.
9 month
Yeah.
gestation period where, they're just adjusting themselves to what you're giving them. It's just,
Yep.
it takes you 9 months to figure that out. So you're having
Yep.
all these problems with weight gain and cattle, and getting pregnant and all this stuff because, things that happened 9 months ago. So with bees, it's much easier to tell because they have just a shorter lifespan that we can tell, hey, look, this year, like we built up to this much, but this is really the carrying capacity of your bees, and then it's easy to fix. No problem. We just need more blooms. Or we need to establish better water sources because the last 3 years, the water that was there 4 years ago, year round, is no longer there.
Right.
So
Well,
those are things that are needed anyways on a farm.
Well, and so, I mean, to put it lightly, you might cause a little bit of controversy in the bee community. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, but I'm
Well,
not.
and,
Mm.
and I'm not saying it's a problem, but I'm kind of putting it in perspective because you're the first bee guy that I ever heard that said, we're not losing bees because of, or solely because of the pesticides, as far as herbicide, fungicide, insecticide. We're losing bees because we don't have the food resources for them. We don't have the blooms, which your statement of you weren't successful in Nebraska, well, to me, that kind of makes sense potentially, depending on what part of Nebraska you were, because they've simplified the landscape. Where in Kansas, we still, relatively speaking, have a complex landscape where we still have lots of farm ground intermittent with tree rows, with pastures. Um, we still have wheat, corn, milo, soybeans, um, cotton in some areas, sunflowers in some areas. Alfalfa. So we still have, even though we're not a super diverse area as far as crop rotations, we're far more diverse than many areas of the country. And so we are allowing native feral bees to still propagate because, as you have stated, they have self-selected because of that 21-day gestation period. They can evolve quickly, cycle through hatchlings as far as, well, yes, we got a little damage because of a shot of Roundup, but we survived, and the ones that survived, guess what? We're adapting to it. We can figure it out. We can sense it somehow, get the hell out of the area that's happening, and you don't hear that any place else when they're talking about um, problems with the populations of bees. As you have stated, there's plenty of wild bees out there. There's lots of wild bees out there. It's just these high input ones, which are essentially when I first met you, before we ever met, you said you need to watch these documentaries about bees. And as soon as I was watching them, I was like, well, this is no different than the pig industry, the chicken industry, even to a large extent, the cattle industry. We've commercialized the bees and we have all these problems because we're propping them up. And you sit there and you say, well, why do we need to prop them up? Clearly, the wild honeybees, the feral honeybees are thriving. Why don't we capture them and figure out why they're thriving and adapt our system to what those bees are doing? So I know there was a lot right there, but
I, well, let's unpack it a little bit. First of all, I have been very vocal in the past about um, my disgust in how things are run, but everyone here in the U.S. should be able to run their livestock however they want. I mean, basically, we're one of the few countries that has that privilege
hmm
and or right, you know. So I just don't like running high input anything.
right, yeah, yeah,
I don't like running a high input vehicle. I don't need a high input home. You know, I don't need high input livestock.
yep,
So if I could just focus on what I want, if I wanted to breed purebred Italian queen bees that are the max honey producers and the most gentle, I'm going to have to do different management. I
hmm
can get rewarded for selling those bees, but it's going to cost me in management. Um, Nobody wants our bees. Like nobody wants a feral mutt bee. Um, Nobody wants them, you know, and we don't sell them, because they belong to the farm,
right.
they belong to where they came from. So we don't sell honeybees. Um, we sell management services of the bees that are already on the property. Um, and man, I think that's just the gist of it is that we have set up our agricultural system in the US to where we've created an industry that requires bees that need inputs. So it's not the beekeeper's fault. Um, they're filling a need. You
Right.
know, 3/4 of the honeybees, commercially kept honeybees in the whole US are needed for the almond pollination in California. 1/6 of the bees, commercially kept bees, of the 3 million hives that are commercially kept, about 500,000 of those are needed in North and South Dakota for spring canola. Um, so, you know, we've just specialized so much that specialization breeds specialized parasites.
Right.
And and we have top universities in the US and worldwide working on um, technological, you know, chemical warfare type solutions to those, if that makes sense. So I think K-State was just voted the fifth best um, entomology program in the world, um, but they don't have a proper honeybee program. But they're doing great with other insects. Like they do so much with so many insects and so many diseases for crops. You know, they're not graded on just honeybees. They do
Right.
an excellent job at, you know, having all these other things. You know, hopefully we can try to develop something with honeybees there. But I think we're pro insects, I guess. Um, just so many. I mean, you and I have been to so many places where it's just like I don't even know statistics anymore. For something like what do they say? For every 1,000 insects, there's like two that are bad. So it's like
Right.
we just have to look at things a little bit different. That's all.
Well, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. And
and
I think,
people should take control.
well, it just, it blows my mind that in the in the agricultural community, I don't like to use the word regenerative. I just don't. But for a namesake, we'll use that term. We'll call it the regenerative community, the regenerative agricultural community. You are the only one I have ever heard say that the problem, though, is a lack of resources for the bees as far as pollen and nectar. Like that's the reason why we struggle. That's the reason why we don't have this stuff. And to me, that's just I, I can't wrap my head around how no one else has caught that or done any kind of research on that. I mean, I it's when you said that, it's like, well, duh. I mean, why? Of course. I mean, we always talk about it for all the beneficial in the native pollinators. We talk about that constantly, that, oh, it's because we don't have any blooms, so we don't attract them. So we interseed a cover crop to have the blooms to attract them. Well, why wouldn't the same be true for a honeybee? And it just, I don't know. It's one of those things that it's frustrating that the message is not um, getting out there. That there's no focus on it. The focus is simply pesticides, fungicide, bad, bad, bad. That's causing all the problem. Not, well, what about food resources?
Yeah, one proper management. That's it. Pesticides, not a problem. Bromite, not an issue. All these other mites, American foul brood, like all these things that we read about in, things that have devastated, you know, um, the beekeeping industry for 100 years. Where are they? Not in
Right.
our hives. Every year, our hives grow in numbers. Um, we do, we do, for complete transparency, we do purchase um, brood stock from varroa sensitive. for hygienic behaviored bees from commercial beekeepers. I mean, we want to make sure that we're not propagating something that, you know, is completely feral, but you know, we have the feral backbone to whatever, people think is the latest and greatest in honeybees. So, we do have some yards where we're making sure that we're doing right by the industry to make sure we're not going to cause a problem. But I mean, our losses are our winter losses are vastly great, like less than the industry standard. Our year on year losses are probably on par with the industry,
Hmm.
but our bees reproduce way faster. Like the amount of chances we get is just parabolic compared to what everybody else. So every year we grow in number of beehives.
Hmm.
Um, so because we have adequate water, adequate blooms, we have a hive design that's very different than everybody else's, something proper for this state, Nebraska, northern states. I don't know that our beehive would be successful in Arizona, in California, in Texas, in Florida. I don't, it hasn't been tested in those states, in those
Right.
environments, in high humid, high heat environments. I don't know that our hive would work there. I don't know that our bees will work there. So if that makes sense, like we're not trying to go to those states.
Right.
We're not trying to force our bees to be outside an environment that they're comfortable in. Um, and I don't think if we purchased bees from other states to run, I'm not convinced that they would be successful with our management system.
Right. Right. Well,
Crazy.
it's
Um,
it's no different than you can run Black Angus cattle in Arizona, but they probably need to be Black Angus cattle that have been there in Arizona if you expect them to thrive. You're not necessarily going to take a Black Angus cow from Nebraska and ship her down to Arizona and expect her to be able to perform the exact same way that she did in Nebraska. So why should a bee be any different? It's not that you can't have a bee. They just need to be suited to that environment. You're going to have your struggles until they get adapted and used to that food resource and they start propagating and have younglings. And again, like you said, that 21-day propagation period. I mean, your bees can evolve so much faster and should be able to adapt so much faster to an area because they are propagating so fast. And so it shouldn't take you too long to make your system more widely adopted. I mean, because they can propagate so fast. I mean, I expect in 5 years you're going to be the bee king of North America, right?
maybe two.
Okay.
We're, we're shooting for two. We're shooting
Okay.
for two because we're already 9 years behind, my friend.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, no. That's good.
I'm serious. I'm
What
serious.
what was your educational background like for college? Where did you go to college? What did you study in college?
It'd be easier if I told you what I didn't study in college.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I went to college in California. Um, I don't think I'm going to tell you where because as soon as they find out from the college, um, as soon as they find this podcast on YouTube, they're going to track me down and ask me for donations. So
Yeah.
let's
Fair
just say it
enough.
was in
Fair enough.
California.
Okay.
Let's just say it's in California. When I become the bee king of the US, I will send them donations. But
Okay.
I'm not there
Okay.
yet,
Okay.
my dear university. Um, they do that every time they find my name in a newspaper. Um, and I'm not there yet, but I'll be there for you. Um, I studied business administration and languages, French, Spanish, Russian. Um, but I spent many times. I almost had a minor in equine. So 9 years ago, I had a chance to. And 9 years ago, I knew more about horses than I did about honeybees. Um, and I had a choice of pursuing natural hoof care for horses or following honeybees. I didn't want to try to do both. Um, and what it came down to is, well, if I had my own horses, my own ranch, if I was raising my own, livestock, um, I could make a living, but I would have needed to start by working on other people's horses.
Hmm.
And a horse can maim you. I mean,
Yep.
to no fault of their own, I could end up crippled very quickly,
Right.
you know, back broken, you know, shoved up against a stall, um, through no fault of their own, you know, some barn cat jumping on them while I'm underneath them. That has happened to me. Or, I could get stung to death by honeybees. So those were my two options. Um, at least with honeybees, I can control many of the circumstances. I can walk away from them. I could kick the hive over and drive away and come back in the winter once they're all dead. Can't do that with a customer's horse.
Right, right.
Um, and I wear a full suit um, whenever I need to. I wear at least face protection, the hand protection not so much, but I wear face protection and a upper body protection every single time I go into a beehive. And anybody that works bees with us is required to wear full PPE when we're out because we just don't know. We just have to mitigate that risk
Right.
for our safety. Um, so that's what we decided to do. In college, I was on the rodeo team. I was on the logging team. We did some study abroad programs.
You're talking to someone from Kansas and you said logging team. I'm sorry.
You should see my Facebook lately. Me and
Uh,
Bob have been at it taking out these
uh,
Siberian elms.
uh,
They're not great big trees, but
right, right.
yeah.
So, so, so,
So I was
so,
on the rugby team. I
how do
actually
you, how do
played
you,
a juniors national rugby in France.
how do
Go
you
ahead.
say Paul? How do you say Paul Bunyan in Spanish?
That's a good one. I would probably call him, well, Paul is Pablo.
Well, that's what I
Bunyan,
thought. Pablo Bunyan? It'd probably just be Pablo Bunyan, wouldn't it?
I'll have to look that up. I don't know what Bunyan would be like in
Uh,
Spanish.
sorry, sorry to
But
sidetrack, but
no, I was not great at logging. But one time we did win seventh out of 32. My logging partner and I, we won seventh out of 32 teams that competed um, like professionally.
gotcha,
So
gotcha.
we were okay. We were
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm sure you would beat any team in Kansas. So,
Ah! Oh, no. But I do still have all my fingers.
well, there,
So
yeah, yeah.
and no, it was a great time going to that university. But that's where I learned how to keep bees
Hmm.
commercially. So I'm glad you asked that question. Um, I didn't work honeybees before college. I had an experience as a young child with honey, and we always had access to fresh honey on comb, not necessarily runny honey. So we always had access to that. I think one of my favorite treats is dried cheese, queso, with honey on it, like with a comb on it. So instead of bread,
Hmm.
uh, but you can't get dried cheese very much, goat cheese and stuff like that. In fact, some of our family who owns wineries or who owns wine labels and makes wine in the Napa Valley recently paired up our honey with some of their really expensive Cabernet wine, and they raise goats, so they made goat cheese. Um, we were featured there on their Instagram um, feed, and that's how good our honey is. But that's where we learned how to keep bees commercially. Um, when they restarted the beekeeping program, I needed a job for the summer, so I was able to get hired through the university um, to work at the beekeeping yard that they had just started. I didn't get enough hours between wood shop, metal shop, and then computer lab tech. So in the summer, all those things were not available because all the kids were gone, but the beekeeping unit was really busy. The last time I checked with my old professor, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I still have the most amount of hours logged worked at the beekeeping unit than anybody else for the last 24 years. So nobody else has logged as many hours worked in the beekeeping unit as I have. So that just goes to tell you how broke I was in college or how devoted I was to learning about honeybees. I got to learn to keep honeybees from a man that worked for Kona Queen Company in Hawaii. He worked there for 17 years and got hired on by the university to restart the beekeeping program. So we focused a lot on queen rearing
Hmm.
and building up the number of hives. We managed just over 400 hives together for 2 seasons. And we would take them to the different units of the university. So we would pollinate avocados, citrus, their pumpkins. We tried putting them on the vineyards, their alfalfa crops, their sunflower crops. So every unit in the ag program, was growing crops different times of the year.
Hmm.
And our bee unit would take bees to pollinate the different things. All that produce was either sold to like at the student store or to local markets, and our honey was sold at the student store as well. Um, Probably the tastiest honey that we ever made in California was star thistle honey. And I actually have a jar of star thistle honey that's 12 years old that hasn't crystallized yet. I have like this much left. Um, there are there are there are honeys that are just incredible, out of this world. Like, when you guys go and do your soil pit samples and you guys, smell the soil and taste the dirt and stuff like that. I always chuckle because I'm like, I think I'd rather just eat the honey that comes from this land. You can taste the carbon. You can taste the complexity of the carbon in our honey instead of eating it in the dirt. So
Everyone nerds
I
out on their
always
own
think that's
thing.
funny. What?
Said everyone nerds out on
What
their
was
own
that?
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
I
I mean,
stopped eating. I stopped eating when I was like 5.
obviously, you had a passion for it, though. Um, so I mean that's clearly, like I said, yeah. You probably were a broke college student, needed the money, but you clearly started a passion, or it sparked your passion for it, and it sent you down a different career path than being a being a horse trainer. Like I said, very different career path, but definitely one of those things that, yeah, I mean, look where you are now. I mean, like you said, you never would have guessed to be where you are at this point, and you've been on a you went from California to Kansas. I mean, that doesn't happen too often.
This is the Holy Land. This is where bees are. My dad, before he passed, he said, "If you ever want to be successful at something, so here we are.
Gotcha.
Bees are successful on their own here in Kansas, in the Midwest. So this is where we live.
Well,
Um,
I got to correct
in
you on something though. We're not the Midwest. We're the High Plains. You got to start using that term. We're not the Midwest. We're the High Plains.
High Plains. High Plains?
Yep.
Okay. What's the
Yep.
Midwest? What's the Midwest?
Uh, that would be more like Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could
You
go for that.
yeah, say High Plains. It makes it sound like it's a much tougher environment to thrive in.
The barren sea in the High Plains.
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely.
There are many places. There are many places here in the High Plains where where I show up and I'm like, nope, we're not doing it. It ain't happening. Like, there's no way. There's no way we're doing bees here. Um, in fact, in those places, I'm like, I mean, we got to fix the soil first so that the water can stay, and then the bees will come, um, and everybody else, I guess. But yeah, the High Plains is has been a very challenging environment, and we have really pushed certain areas where maybe we shouldn't have. Um, we have tried to push to keep bees in certain areas that um, because there's motivation in change with the farmer's family, and how they want to change an area. But it's tough, man. It's tough. Um, the advice of my dad, advice, but we're so attached. We're so attached to where we were born. I miss California dearly. But I like working with bees, and it's either here or Egypt or Mongolia. So stay tuned.
Well, I'm waiting for the vineyards to start popping up again in Kansas. I'm waiting for you to start that adventure.
I don't know if I will. I don't know if I will. I don't know if I will. Um, I think in the 50s or 60s, I think we were the largest table grape exporter in the nation, in the Union.
Hmm.
And you do see vineyards here. And actually, in most of the places where we're successful with bees, we actually do see old, old vines, mainly. I haven't identified them as any modern varietal, but we have a lot of white grapevines um, that the bees actually pollinate. So we do see we do see small crops of grapes um, because we do see bees pollinating the blooms at bud break for vineyards. But
Well,
I don't know.
I think part of what killed the grape industry in Kansas was a prohibition, from what I understand, because we were a very large wine producing state, and Kansas was one of the first states to start prohibition, and then we were one of the last states to actually lift prohibition. And so, from what I understand, that had a definitely had an impact on grape acres, and that's what you see more of nowadays in the state. Well, as far as I know, exclusively almost is just grapes for wine production in the state. I haven't heard of anybody doing table grapes in Kansas.
I think that if I started something like that, it would be more of a meadery to make mead. Um,
Oh,
so for any of you that don't know, or for anybody that sees this, we started working with somebody in the northern high plains of Kansas this last year, and their family owns. Here's a plug for them. Irrigation Ales in Cortland, and this was the first year that we helped them. They had some bees for a couple years, but we helped them kind of get going and expand. and we produced enough honey for them to be able to create um, a beer with our honey. So I'm not sure if they have any left, but if you guys are ever in northern Kansas in the Cortland area, you should stop by Irrigation Ales. Great family. A couple of the brothers are farmers. One of them has sheep. They do rotational grazing with on different lands. Uh, we're getting their honey operation going. But yeah, our honey is landing in other products on these farms, and that's that's the versatility of honey. That it could be sold as runny honey, as creamed honey, whipped honey. We fermented honey products. The wax we're making now candles. Um, we're making uh, hand balms, beeswax, moisturizers. We have some manly scents too, not just for the ladies, but yeah, such a versatile livestock. That's easy to process if that makes sense. So, a cow could be very versatile if you could tan its hide, if you could process it yourself, if you could, keep the bones and sell the bones. And I guess we could start talking about the livestock portion of things now. It's kind of where I'm headed. But what's great about the honeybees is that there's minimal processing to get multiple products from it. Not only can we
Hmm.
get pollination for our crops, for our gardens, you know, just about every farm, reports that after a year of having honeybees, they have a bigger abundance of, peaches or pears or cherries or apples, or tomatoes, or their gardens are thriving. So when we can increase the pollinator workforce to supplement the native pollinators, um, we win. And I think many livestock have a use like that. It's just that the bees self-organize. If we have the right stock of bees, and if we have the right management of bees, and the right environment for them, they don't need us. Um, we're really, when we're going in to do bee inspections, we're making sure that we're just communicating with them to see where they're at, maybe what their needs are. Maybe their needs are, hey, they're needing another box. Maybe their needs are, hey, we're too plugged up with honey. Take honey so we have more room for us to live in. So every time we go into a hive, it's a communication. Just like every time you go check your cattle, you can look at their condition. Um, heck, we took on Dexter cows this year, and sure enough, like, well, one of them's very vocal, right? But um, there's ways when you know your livestock, what they need, even, as you're driving up. So that's all we do with bees. We just think it's easier with bees because they have a very short gestation period, because they're easy to manage, they're easy to move, they're self-sufficient, self-organizing, um, and they happen to produce a delicious product. So that's pretty easy to take. Um, so
Well,
maybe that's their downfall.
is that their honey's easy to take?
Yeah, yeah, and they can be manipulated so easily.
Right.
Like the honeybee, there's a book called Honeybee Democracy by Tom Seeley, and I think their demise is that they are a truly democratic um, group where um, everything is functioning great until the bees are shows up and changes everything else. So, yeah, we show up and be like, no, you guys not sharing all those things, all those things are mine. So, and kind of in a natural environment, it's very easy to have a communication with them to see what their needs are. Um, And it's a mutually beneficial relationship when we can have that kind of intimate um, sense of community between the both of us. So that's what we try to do.
Well, and with the way that you have set up your company, I mean, you get to travel all over and meet all sorts of interesting farmers and establish a relationship with people, and you get to help, they help you, and you help them, and it's mutually beneficial. And I mean, it's a great setup of how your company, how you've set your company up, and how you're running your company, and instead of hauling your bees necessarily all over the place, you're hauling yourself all over the place. You get to go see and um, get to go see all different areas, and you get to expand your knowledge as far as what blooms are happening in the south central part of the state versus what's going on in the north central part of the state, and what really thrives and works up there versus what works and thrives in maybe Oklahoma or something. And so, yeah, you and like I said, obviously the most important part of it is the connections, the people connections that you get to establish because of the model of your business. I mean, that's we don't have bees yet on our place, but that's the reason why I established the connection with you was trying to get the bees, and um, with the bees comes Jorge. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny at the interesting you say that at the I was invited to give a little talk at the last May. We had the Bimbo group. No, yeah, the Bimbo group come. They had donated a. I think it was the Bimbo group. Oh, no, I'm trying to figure out. No, the General Mills group. We had a whole day
oh,
the General Mills project that invested so much money in like the Cheney area,
hmm.
helping farmers um, with figuring out how they can regenerate their farms. Well, I was invited to give a short talk there, and we stopped at five different places for the General Mills uh, top brass to come see, and just about every place that I was never part of that program, but I was invited to share my thoughts on pollinators and how they fit into this um, into rebuilding our communities. And and every different place we went to, we had bumblebees like swarming us, basically. Um, and then, the first time it was just like, well, that's interesting. And I think people didn't know that I was a bee guy. They wasn't, I was just kind of tagging along. And the second one, someone was like, all right, Jorge, we know you're releasing them out of your pockets now. Like, what all these bees doing? But every single place we got like zoomed by bumblebees and other pollinators. So it's funny you said that about where the bees are, Jorge will be. So that's right. You will not find me. You will not find me where there are no insects. I won't be there. I don't want to be
Well,
there.
well, and we'll transition here a little bit, but like I said, the meeting, the first meeting I had with you immediately after what I seen in the landscape began changing, because all of a sudden I started noticing anytime I seen a bloom of any sort, whether it's trees, different, whether it's henbit, whether it's dandelions, um, brush. It just was immediately like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that over there? Oh, when is that blooming? Huh. I mean, I sent you a picture, was that last year? I sent you a picture of a dandelion blooming in December or January. I can't remember. That I probably never would have noticed before. And so uh, it really, it really reinforced or expanded how I look at things and the things that I observe. Um, and it doesn't seem to matter where I'm at because I travel all over pulling soil samples, and I'll notice, oh, there's some flowers, or oh, there's what are the sweat bees is what we call them. I notice them a lot more at times, and I'm like, okay, what are they going after right now type of thing. And so it's just, like I said, you really triggered something in me. Um, and whether or not we are ever able to capture bees, I'm still going to try to do my best. And if nothing else, it benefits the native pollinators.
Yeah. We're encroaching upon your area. Don't worry. So 50, 60 miles away from you. So, you know, as those apiaries expand, we will we'll take over your area here pretty soon, and you're on our list for your area. So
Well,
you'll
no,
be the
that's
first
good.
one in that area.
Um, like I said, we'll transition a little bit from bees and talk a little bit about livestock. Um, so last year you spoke at No Till on the Plains, and you had two talks. One was focused solely on the honeybees, pretty much, and the other one was how to save the world in 5 minutes, I believe. And it was because of
Yeah.
that talk. It was because of that talk. Came home. We live in town, and we'd had chickens before, and my wife had talked about getting chickens, or we talked about getting chickens. I was like, no, I don't want to get chickens in town. We can just get eggs from my mom or something. Came home, told my wife, we're getting chickens. And we ordered chickens within a week of me coming home because of your talk on what everything, excuse me, everything that you were doing um, with your little plot of land. And, uh, and so, yeah, just really showcase how productive you can be on not a whole lot of land in any size, shape, or form. And so, yeah, just talk a little bit about that. However much you want to go into detail, um, what you've done, the different animals you have raised, you have experience, and a little bit of how you raised them.
Yeah. So I think the principles that we use for our bees are the same for livestock and for humans. First and foremost, water. We need a good water source for any livestock, even for humans. You know, I had my pipes freeze here in the house last winter. Try going 4 days without water. Try going a day without water. Most people are not ready for that.
Hmm.
So you can't have livestock. You can't have bees. You can't have life without water. So it doesn't matter where you're at, how big your plot of land is, what you're at. I think these four principles apply to everything. Water is number one, is the very first thing. That was the first thing that was created, separated land from the sea. The second thing, we need food sources. Without water, we can't grow food. So for livestock, can I grow enough forage to keep these animals on my land without them, escaping? Yeah, the pigs that we raised here in the backyard that we should not have in the city limits, they required me to bring in inputs. So it was tough,
Hmm.
but they were tasty. Um, and I had three of them escape in two different townships in the High Plains. Let me tell you what, I was on speed dial with the Hayes Police and Animal Control Department when that pig escaped from my trailer when I was in Hayes. And I was just like, just relax. It's a domesticated pig. Like it'll come to grain, at 8:30 tomorrow morning. You need to get over here now. Like, just relax. It's not gonna eat your babies. Boy, I'll never live that one down. Luckily, because of my community, I was able to borrow, six 16-foot hog panels from somebody, and I was able to go there the next day, and we were able to lure them in. But yeah, water, food source, making sure you're spending enough time with your animals so that they know you're the purveyor of food. Um, right now, we have a couple of sheep in the backyard because we were training a litter of Pyrenees puppies. We had a request this year for the We train one litter of Pyrenees puppies to be guardians um, that we then sell to farms. And we had a request from two uh, previous purchasers of puppies from last year. They wanted us to introduce them to sheep. Uh, so we purchased a couple sheep. So we have them in the backyard right now. They're due to go back out to the pasture, but because of the weather that we've had, we haven't been able to put up the proper fencing to get them back out. Um, so we don't intend to grow the sheep here in our yard, but temporarily you could do something like that. We have a Great Pyrenees quail, so we actually breeding building where we actually raised a ton of jumbo Coturnix quail. Man, they're tasty. Um, we stopped doing those recently because our bee business is growing, and we helped enough families in our community raise them that if we needed to purchase um, food, finished quail from them, we could actually support them in their efforts from buying, brooder stock from us. We do still raise rabbits. Rabbits fit much better into our rotation with bees. Our bee work is really between April 1st and September 1st. Um, so in the fall and winter and early spring, rabbits seem to thrive here, at least the rabbits that we have um, acquired, evolved, had adapted to our hot summers in a city environment outdoors and a cold winter environment in the cities. So we do raise quite a bit of them. We probably go down to about 50 rabbits during the bee season, and we don't breed them during the summer while we're busy with bees. But we last year we got up to almost 1,000 rabbits. Um, that I'd say a third of them got butchered out um, and sold or we consumed. Um, and then the other two-thirds were sold as like brooding stock to people in every state around us. People come from every state around us to come buy our heat and cold tolerant rabbits, meat rabbits specifically. Recently, we did acquire some Angora rabbits for their wool. Um, it's something that we wanted to learn how to do um, in the winters. So we'll see how that project goes. Um, we raise all sorts of chickens. Let's see. I'll turn you around here if I can. I've got some pictures for everyone to see. So we raised a ton of chicks. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep. Nope. Yep. You're good. Yep.
So this is like one of our brooders. So we raised a ton of egg-laying chickens. With two different farms where we have bees, we actually raise Cornish cross chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they manage the chickens themselves from all the way to processing, and then we help with all the processing, and then we help um, in finding customers for pasture-raised chickens.
Gotcha.
Uh, we've done this for 3 years now at one place and 1 year at another place. So we've got east and west. So once again, trying to help farmers produce real food that's going to go to their freezers or their neighbors' freezers. All of these are we help advertise on our social media. That's kind of what they end up looking like. Here's some of the rabbits that we process. We do a lot of dehydrating that you can see in the background there. And this year we learned how to can, so we've been canning up a storm. Um, but most of the produce that we acquire or trade for, except for the pineapples. Those came from Hawaii. We do a lot of winter prep stuff. Um, Before we got our pigs this year, we did work with a different farmer to raise three pigs for us. So we do sell processed um, pig. The pig and the cows have to go through a processing facility for us to be able to resell it.
Right.
Um, Here's a one of the flyers at one of the locations where we raise pasture-raised chickens. We actually teach people how to what it takes to actually raise these themselves. So we started an educational component with one of our farms to where we offer the opportunity for somebody to come see everything that it takes for them to raise chickens at their house. So we go through, the feeding regimens, the equipment that's needed, and then we have everyone process enough chickens so that they're comfortable doing it for themselves. So very, very fun day. Um, Very good
I've
experience for a lot of people.
I would just tell people I have raised me and my brother we raised some pastured broilers a couple summers and raising them isn't the hard part. I don't think it's the butchering part. We could have definitely used with a class to teach us how to actually butcher instead of just YouTube. But no, they're definitely they're delicious. It's just you gotta have the time. It's once a day at least that you go and check them and move them and feed them, if not twice a day. But if you got the time, it's definitely worth the quality of the chicken.
Yeah, and I don't want to say it's cheaper than a chicken, but we're helping people take control of their food.
Right.
Um, I don't believe in, big conspiracy theories or anything like that. I have worked for Tyson,
Hmm.
um, doing sanitation of one of their plants, and I can assure you, I never once met an employee of Tyson's that's like, "Oh, we're gonna get them.
Right.
Oh, we're like, we're gonna stick it to the customer." Like
Right, right.
they're they're regular people. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
they're people like you and me, working 10, 12 hours a day, processing pig skins, pig bellies, like chickens. These people are not out to freaking get you, man.
Right,
Like,
right. It's just that there is a difference. I mean, it's no different. You can take the same beef and you can send it to say send it to Tyson to get butchered and then go buy that, say especially the hamburger. Go buy that hamburger in the store versus if you take that same animal out of the same pen, send it to a local locker and go and buy that hamburger and eat that or just set them side by side, not even eat them. There is a difference. I don't know where the difference happens. I don't know what it is in the processing that changes it. I'm not saying it's safe. What's going to like you said, going through Tyson or JBS or any of these, I'm just saying it's not the same product that you get even just from a local pack-in plant versus what's coming from those guys. That's all I'm saying.
it can't be. It can't be. They have so many rules and
Right,
regulations, for the safety of humans.
right,
Um, they have to jump through so many hoops. I truly believe that the cost of food, when it comes to processing an animal, is not accurate. I think I think humanity is getting a steal
right,
for what we're paying for food that's processed industrially.
right,
Because
right.
here's the price that you're not paying. I don't think consumers are paying, and I probably shouldn't be saying these things. These are personal beliefs that I don't necessarily want to push onto other people. But when you raise a chicken on your own, you are up every day taking care of that animal.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a cost to that. There's an economic psychological, spiritual cost to raising your own animal, taking it to its end of its life, and putting it into a vacuum packed bag to put into your freezer. That cost is high.
Yep.
The cost of that is extremely high, emotionally, spiritually, especially. We're not paying for that for the people that have to do that for us.
Right.
We're
Right.
basically paying a bribe fee to have somebody else that we don't know put their hands on our food.
Right.
And that's why I do what I do. I do what I do because I can and I want to, because I want to be, I want to pay the actual cost that it takes to nourish myself. Um, I don't want to have to pay for somebody else to have to do that for me. I don't think it's right. That's just a personal belief.
Right. Right.
Um,
Well,
if
and like butchering, I don't care how many animals. I mean, for me personally, I don't care how many animals that you've had to, whether you have to butcher them or or put them down because they're injured or something. It's it never is easy as far as like, yes, you can do it, but it always is in your mind like this kind of sucks that I have to, like, if it's a chicken cutting its head off or you got to put an animal down for whatever reason. We're paying someone that does that on an industrial scale. Um, I can't I can't imagine having to put down dozens and hundreds of animals day after day after day. Um, like it takes a toll on you, I guess is what
yeah,
I'd say. I mean, even it's, I mean, yeah, it's not a big enough moral dilemma that I'm not going to eat chicken or steak, but it does challenge you to put an animal to butcher an animal to kill an animal, and everyone who eats meat should experience that at some point in their life, so they understand like, yes, you are ending a life, plain and simple.
yeah. And but then there's a reward to it as well.
Yes, yes, absolutely, yes,
So, when I have my amazing quail eggs that I raised, that I had to go gather myself, that I had to go, you know, figure out what the best feed is to get the best quail eggs so that people want to buy them from me and not anybody else. When I have them, you know, it completes a circle for me. And I think that's what our society is missing. I think I don't think it's a thing of like empty calories. I think it's a thing of
right.
empty spiritual calories, if that makes sense.
Well, I can tell you that we're eating a whole lot more eggs now that we have our own chickens again, than we did before we had our own chickens. I am making eggs for breakfast a whole lot more than I
Yeah.
was before, and I don't know if it's. I mean, I I don't know. It's just one of those things. I was like, oh, we got plenty of eggs. We're gonna eat them. I mean, and and you always feel. I mean, I can eat two eggs and I can be pretty satisfied for a lot of the day just by eating a couple eggs. So, yeah, I think there is something to it, but I also understand that it isn't also not everyone is capable of producing their own food, and I get that. I totally get that. Um, it's really neat when you can showcase people who are doing those things on such a small scale and like this is how much you can actually do, and you're doing it in a responsible manner, um, for the animals, for the the ecology, um, and you get a fantastic product at the end of it. So sorry for the divergent, but no, this is a good conversation.
Yeah. And once again, these things we do in addition to honeybees, if the farmer or the homestead wants to. This is nothing we
Right,
push onto them. This is absolutely not a requirement, you know. In fact, it takes more work for us to implement these things, but the reward, the community that we get out of this, once again, this has nothing to do with scarcity. This has to
right,
do with abundance. This has to do with abundance. The bees show us the way that where there's abundance of water and nectar, we can have abundance. So why can't we push this abundance onto other things that we need, other things that our land needs.
Hmm.
Our land needs raptors. They need scratching things.
Right.
Our land needs hooves. You know, um, our land needs predator protectors. You know, our land needs plants. Um,
And,
this is
and our land
beyond,
and
yeah,
our land needs predators.
yeah,
They
and
that
that's
that
us. That's us
right, right.
mainly,
Well,
right?
and I mean, and there's a place for coyotes. There's a place for raccoons. There's a place for possums. There's a place for all of them um, to be in balance. Um, we don't have to we don't have to drive them off the land to have a successful, whether it's a sheep operation or chicken operation. We can live
Yeah,
in we can live in balance with them, and they can take care of some of the voles and the moles uh, and so yeah, it's a whole it's a systems approach, and that's what you've taken with the bees, and that's what you've taken even with your backyard. What are we
yeah.
looking at right here in this picture for those that don't know?
What's that?
What
Oh,
are we?
this is the backyard. So our backyard changes by the season. Um, so we focus a lot since we don't have enough blooms as far as trees and shrubs um, in our tree rows and some of our farms. We raise them for the farmers. Um, so this would be like our backyard in late spring. What you see a lot of there, the big leaves are trees. Inside these buckets are actually soil plots. We have some that are just, and this has been going on for 5 years, where we have soil plots in different buckets. Some are just grasses, some are just legumes, some are just forbs, some are diverse. Um, the ones where we grow trees and shrubs obviously have all three things. Um, but this is how we have learned about soil health and the dangers of having monocultures of grasses on grasses on grasses, where we have pulverization of soil. Our plots of of our little land plots here that have legume on legume on legume, we find extreme soil compaction. Um,
Hmm.
our plants of just forbs like thrive. Like they are the fastest way to replenish carbon in these pots. And we find that, on people's farms too, where we have the most forbs that get to go to blooms. You find the highest levels of carbon um, and the deepest layers of carbon. So we've been studying soil for about 5 years in this very controlled environment. Most of these are only like a foot to a foot and a half deep. You can see some are mineral buckets, but most everything is like a 5 gallon bucket. Um, and that's about as far as most farmers look. They just look at the top 6, 8 inches of soil, right?
Right.
So in in some of these pots that we have had forbs year after year, the whole thing is like black to the bottom. Um, the ones that we have had just grasses, um, it's we've depleted basically the majority of the carbon in there, and the soil is just pulverized. The grasses will come back a little bit, build their own carbon back, and then go back to their oxidative state after they go to seed. Um, and then the legumes, very similar. They choke themselves out in a couple of years, probably because of the amount of nitrogen that they produce. Um, they 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 compact the soil to where the water runs off um, and pools to the edges of the container and then just drains down the bottom and doesn't actually infiltrate.
Hmm.
So um, this has been like our study of soil in our
Right.
backyard in a controlled environment. And now we're 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 doing this now on farms to where we can um, we're introducing we're figuring out how to introduce more forbs to help the bee populations, but also so we can see that uh, layer of carbon continue to build down. Um, this is our winter rabbit operation, as you can tell. Um, we do this is our incubator room. We've just sold all our incubators. These are all of our egg laying chickens. We didn't do that this year, but the last several years we would buy young pullets in July and we would overwinter them to have them available for families as young egg layers in the spring. So there's ducks in the bottom here. Um, so we do basically like a high litter. There's all the ducks. Um, so very compact area. These guys produce a high nitrogen compost pile for us over the winter.
Hmm.
So every day we go in to add more straw, more hay. So we get about 1.5 feet, 2 feet of compost. Then we turn pigs onto um, in early spring, late winter, early spring, once all these animals are sold, and then the pigs will turn up all of this compost, add their own manure, and that's what we use for our pots, for our plants. That's it. Rabbit towers in the summer, really big rabbits we raise. I think that's all I got. Well, there's all of our trees early spring. So we will buy trees, we will graft trees. So this is early spring. That's kind of sideways there. There's our pigs. Go the extra mile. It's never crowded there. Thank you. So yeah, I think if you're gonna raise something, um, if you want to raise anything in your backyard, you should do it. Now, the city's not gonna like it, but um,
Well, I
go
and
somewhere.
well, I think how we could change that. We just have to get more people wanting to do it because if more people want to do it and then they get involved, if they go to city council or they run for city council, that's what we really need to get is people who want livestock in the backyard. We need to get them on the city council so they can change these ordinances, um, and be more friendly. Uh, I don't understand quite why. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're one of the only countries that frowns as much as we do on urban ag, essentially. Um, in other countries, it's common practice in many countries, from what I understand. I mean, it's not unusual to have some chickens in your backyard, to have maybe a milk goat in your backyard. Like, what's the big deal? Do we own our property or do we not own our property?
I think you know the answer to that, but
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, a little bit rhetorical, a little bit rhetorical. But yeah, we actually live in a city or in a town, our town. You can pretty much have any livestock in your backyard so long as you get your neighbors to sign off on it.
yeah.
So if we wanted to, we could have a cow in our backyard so long as our neighbors were okay with it and we got it
I would
approved.
I would probably be the type of person that would ruin that for everybody. So I try to be very careful and strategic with what I have, and I also don't have things year round. So
Right,
I kind of place myself as a purveyor of breeding stock, um, but like there's no way, like if I wanted to get a donkey, like I would never bring it into town,
right,
you know.
right,
There's certain things, even a cow, like I don't have enough room for it. And
right.
once again, all those animals have short gestation periods. So
Yep,
it's purposeful for what you want. My advice to anybody who wants to get into livestock or to plants is only get what you like eating.
right,
You know, I've purchased so many animals that I was like, oh man, those are selling great. Like if I could raise those, I could sell them to other people. But I don't like eating them. So what's
right.
the point? Like, there's no point. raising livestock for yourself is where it's at. When people realize, when people see that you're raising animals and you're eating them for yourself, um, that's what people want. They don't want to buy something from somebody who doesn't eat their own product. So,
Right.
um, raise what you really like. Um, and I don't think you could go wrong with anything. I really don't. Water, proper food, proper housing, and proper management. That's it.
Yep.
Um, you will figure those things out. The proper housing for pigs and sheep and dogs, you will find out what that means. Um, um, you will learn really quick what that means if you live in a city environment.
Right.
But yeah, I think, you know, we live in a country where we live in the high plains where there's so many things that are available. You couldn't do this in other states. There's other states that, you don't have access to animal auctions or, people who actually raise just about every single thing that you can think of.
Hmm.
You can't find that in other states. So, um, if you live in the high plains, um, man, go for it. Just go for it. Spring is coming. Do research, watch YouTube videos, reach out to people. I would suggest, you know, try to buy from people that are okay with you coming over to look at how their animals are raised.
Right.
Pay a little bit more for the knowledge. Pay a little bit more for somebody who's willing to say, this is how I do it, you know. So yeah.
Well, we've been talking for a good while now. Before we wrap up here, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover today? Or we can always, like I said, we can always do another one. Maybe we'll do an in-field one when come up sometime here this spring, and we maybe maybe we need to put up another bee box in a different location. I don't know.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. At least one more. I think you have in fishing you can buy up to a 3 rod stamp, right? So
I don't know.
I
I'm originally from Western Kansas, so I'm not a fisherman. Like,
so I think we need to get a couple more up. But yeah, it what are the last things that I can say? This year, everywhere we go, and we love, I don't want to say we love talking about bees. We just something we do. It's something that I don't know if passion is the right word. We're so involved with bees. They're so integrated into our life that we can't help but talk about bees. So that's how I'll put it. I'm not, I don't want to call it passion. I don't want to call it, a need. It's just our lives are so integrated with bees that, I mean, we'll tie anything, any topic to bees. So be aware. Um, if you would like to learn more about bees, this year we have started a podcast every single day of 2025, 7 a.m. Central High Plains time. Um, it is on a different platform. The platform is called Whatnot. It is that platform is a lot of people don't know about it. It is where Etsy shops meet like a Zoom call. It is a 24-hour Tower of Babel, um, late night um, shopping network experience. Like when you go there, there's going to be just so much stuff going on. Um, we decided to host our show on that platform because we believe that the future um, of sales, of consumer, has to be somewhere where you have access to the people selling you products. So when you shop on Amazon, you have to go through Amazon to get your questions answered. There's a lot of information on there. It's getting to the point where it's too much information, where they rely on the consumer to do all the research to get to the product. So I think that platform is is not quick enough anymore. Um, it's not accessible enough anymore to the people who actually are selling you the product. It's not personalized enough. Um, eBay is the same thing, but it's a little bit closer. They probably have, less competitive pricing, um, but at least you can message back and forth with the person selling it, but you might not get a good response. You might not get an immediate response. You might not get, the information that you want. The application Whatnot, if I'm trying to sell you something, if there's something in my shop, you have direct access to me. Um, and not very many people do what we do is we're on every morning. You have direct access to me about our products and about a topic that we feel we know enough of, or we can get information to you on. So every morning, 7 a.m. Central High Plains time, on the application Whatnot, um, find us. Our name on there is Welcome to the Hive. And we are all over Facebook, kind of trying to get people on that platform. On Facebook, we are NAPA Bees. You can't quite see it behind me, but it's NAPA Bees. That's our handle on Facebook. And from there, you'll be able to find our podcast through our searches. But if you want to get a hold of us, those would be the two best ways. If you have any questions, um, that's how you would get a hold of us this year. Every day of 2025, all of you will have a chance to ask me a question from 7 to 8 a.m. I think that's pretty powerful. It's a huge commitment on my
Yeah,
part.
yeah.
Um, there will be no sleeping in for me in 2025. Like, I could probably go to sleep right after the show, but um, that would be a poor choice of activities if I do that. But yeah, thank you very much for having me on here. I know we covered a lot of different things, and hopefully I didn't say anything that I think we did okay.
Yeah, I think we've done fine. I'm not too worried about it. I mean, it'll be good. It'll be good. Are you speaking anywhere this winter? Are you at any conferences, or are you attending any conferences that people could catch up with you
We
at?
are we are taking the year off.
Okay.
So we will not be speaking or attending any conferences this year, um, because our focus is to be available every day to everybody. Um, I know that we can learn more, but this year we're going to focus on implementation, implementation on all the things that we have learned in the past. Um, I think that's something that's very needed. Um, I think education, gets you 10% of the way there, but the implementation
Yep.
is the other 90%. And not very many people will say that. Most people will say it's the opposite. But I really think the educational component is a very small part of success. Um, you have to do the work.
Right. Yep. Yep. Nope. Well, I think with that, we'll wrap up here. Thanks everybody for joining us. If you've made it this far, this was a long one. Um, but Jorge is a very interesting person and a great guy to talk to, and you never know exactly where you're going to go and what topics you're going to cover. But yeah, maybe we will do this again here sometime later on in the spring or summer or something. Because yeah, there's always more stuff to talk about, and yeah, so yeah, again, thank you, Jorge, for hopping on here this morning. And thank you guys for watching. this will be on YouTube for now. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I will share it onto the Facebook pages. And Jorge, by all means, feel free to share it on any of your pages. And yeah, maybe I told Jorge maybe one of these days I'll actually do a podcast link or something, or just start publishing these on a podcast platform so that way it's not on YouTube and you can uh digest, is that right word, digest the content a little easier, listen to the content a little easier than YouTube. But yeah, get over there to what not, all one word, what not, exactly how you'd spell it, on your iPhone at your app store or Google Play. Is that what it is for Android?
And
But yeah, we'll wrap it up here, guys. We'll see you next time. We'll see when we get this published. But as always, thanks for watching.